Wait, is there, hand me that memo thing there for Doug.
Memo? He's got a copy.
Oh, is there one of those down there too?
Yeah. and
Okay,
a Copy of the new bid document.
never mind. I thought maybe there's one on, one and not on the other.
If you want to sit in here, I'll move down.
That's all right.
No big deal. Jacket's lying
Ready?
there next to you.
Okay, I'd like to call the January 13th, 2015 Public Works Board to order. Missy, roll call, please.
Mr. Temperley,
Here.
Mrs. Wolf,
Here.
Mr. Fritsch,
Here.
Mr. Shar, Mr. Pickard,
Here.
Mr. Reich.
Here.
Next is correction and/or approval of the minutes of our last meeting on December 9th. Any corrections or motion to approve?
I'll move the minutes of the last meeting.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. All those in favor for approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Next item, questions and public comment. Seeing none, moving on to item number 5, discussion on Browns Court and Cook Street bid documents. We've got some plans here.
Yeah, the plans in front of you are kind of the most current version hot off the presses this afternoon. If you don't mind, Stephen. The intent of this project, well, I guess first of all, the project is 3 different areas. The city's looking to reconstruct Browns Court, which is the one kind of to the northeast there on the screen. The box there is shown a little bit larger than just Browns Court because there'll be some storm sewer on Fargo Street as well to drain the area. The one up to the northwest is Cook Street. That'll also be a full reconstruction with sanitary and water mains being replaced, as well as a little bit of storm sewer addition. And then the box to the south is some Circle Drive drainage improvements down at the end of Circle Drive near the lake in Woodland Beach Resort. Our current plan with this project is to try to advertise January 29th and open bids the second Thursday in February. It's generally a fairly straightforward street and utility reconstruction project. Some of the, I guess, more complicated areas would be the Browns and Fargo Street area. Browns Court is a dead-end street with an apartment building at the end of it. So it's also very narrow. The current street is 25 feet back of curb to back of curb, which is extremely narrow for a normal city street. Which also means that when you reconstruct the utilities beneath such a narrow street, access to the apartment building is going to be very difficult, especially during the day when there's active construction. So we talked at City Council last week about doing quite a bit of public notices to make the residents aware of the issue. There is minor potential that you could try to get an access way off of some adjacent streets, but that would entail quite a bit of cooperation from some of the adjacent landowners. You'd be talking about something of the nature of a temporary gravel drive across somebody's yard or something, which, yeah, is very unlikely that somebody would be willing to do that. So that's one complication is the access. The other portion of Browns Court that's looking ahead to the future a little bit is the storm sewer that would go from Browns Court down to Owen Street on Fargo. It would tie into the existing storm sewer system on Owen Street. That will drain Browns Court in the intersection of Browns Court and Fargo, which currently has no storm sewer. We'll also be able to pick up the intersection of Reed and Fargo, which currently has no storm sewer. And then also that system will allow us to drain portions of Mulberry in 2019 when that's constructed to this new storm sewer on Fargo Street. The benefit of doing that is, the intent with the Mulberry Street project is to pull as much storm sewer off of the Madison Street storm sewer as possible, because that already drains quite a bit of the north and west portion of the city, and city staff report that the storm sewer, even in minor rain events, flows pretty much full. So we're hoping to drain only a block or two of Mulberry Street to that storm sewer in 2019. So again, the plans that you have in front of you are kind of the most up-to-date rendition. If you had any questions, love to discuss them at this time.
On all three areas? Or
Yeah, any,
This is a conversation I had with city manager on Cook Street. You're proposing to put in sidewalk on the east side of Cook Street. There is no sidewalk there right now. Can you bring up the map of Cook Street?
yeah, Cook Street would be on page 5? No, sorry, page 7 of your plans there. So the side you're referring to is the kind of the bottom, yeah.
The east, no, the bottom is the west side, right?
The
my
bottom,
house?
below the street is the east side.
North arrow's on the lower right of the...
Yeah, this is where this is where the elementary school is, so this would be the side that doesn't currently have sidewalk.
Yeah,
North is
okay,
to
yeah.
the right.
I don't think sidewalk is needed there, because there's no front doors on that side. That's just two driveways for back garages of houses that are in College and Fremont. I feel that the money spent on that sidewalk would be better spent fixing some on College in Fremont. I know we always feel that putting sidewalks on both sides of streets to be fair, but the sidewalk on the top part, on the west side, it's been there for 100 years. And I'm one of those residents, and nobody really cares that there's sidewalk on our side, and there isn't any on the other side, so there's no animosity towards the city that we have one and they don't, because a lot of the foot traffic comes from the west and uses the west side. There's really no reason for anybody to cross the street just to use a sidewalk on the east side. And
Okay.
you might be able to save some trees by not putting sidewalk there. So be my motion to remove the sidewalk, the new sidewalk installation on the east side of Cook Street.
Okay, I
That's my
take
motion.
them. Yeah. I'll let the board discuss. that.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody want to make a second to that motion? Or ask any further questions?
So if I understand you right, you're just saying that because it's been a long-standing lack of sidewalk there, it's not going to make much difference down the future.
Right. I mean, there's, like I said, those two properties on that side, it's just garages. I mean, if those people have to walk, they have their front doors on College and Fremont Street. And pretty much everyone heads towards College Street to go to the junior high or to head downtown or to the Amical station to get their Sunday paper. When I first moved to the city, on Sundays, that street was just packed full of cars. But since the Lutheran Church has moved out of town, the Moravian Church has acquired property and has had a bigger parking lot. There's absolutely no parking there on Sundays now at all. The only time there's parking is maybe in garage sale days. But like I said, I mean, the sidewalk on the west side does get used. A lot of kids from North Ferry Drive come down Fremont and hang a right on my sidewalk there on Cook Street. But I see no reason why another sidewalk needs to be on the other side. I mean, why? Because the west side sidewalk, it's already fulfilled the needs for pedestrian safety in that neighborhood.
Well, I'm going to chime in and just say that that makes sense to me. It's a one-block street. It's been there forever, the way it is right now. Would anybody have any further, any questions, or would anybody like to make a second?
I guess the motion dies.
I guess so.
I'm not going to be angry.
All right. Any further questions, comments on the entire plan, any part of the plan?
The, in relationship to what Todd said, I was absolutely positive there was already sidewalk on that side, so we budgeted like there'd been sidewalk on that side, and done any special assessment work or anything of that sort. So essentially, it's set up to be built, but not special assessed. So that may be an issue. I don't think, not having to pay for it generally relieves a lot of the stress in relationship to the having constructed. On the other hand, we've always special assessed sidewalks that are new, but we've also always put sidewalk on both sides of the street, so there's, if we don't,
It may add further anger to future assessments. They may point back to Cook Street.
So,
What do you mean by that?
If we have future sidewalk assessments, people are going to say, well, you didn't assess Cook Street.
True, in other words, it's an exception.
we have had an exception in the past for new sidewalk, whereas on Tyranina Road, where it was new sidewalk and wasn't assessed, it was part of the project.
And it usually comes back to bite us in the hindy.
Well, it's an exception. It's a cost that will be incurred by the city instead of property owners. Anybody want to say anything more about that?
I got one question about Brown's Court. You were saying that the reconstruction of Brown's Court and then the sewer out into Fargo, would that happen all at once? Would it be for the access to the people on Brown's Court? Can you explain how it might go as far as the reconstruction would go, so they can get access to the apartment and to their properties?
In terms of access to the apartment building, there will be quite a bit of this construction where, at least during active construction hours, it'll be highly discouraged for anybody to try to get through there with a car. There may be times where, they could pull some machinery to the side or smooth something out to allow somebody to pass, but, those opportunities will be few and far between. And during construction hours, likely what will be asked is that they park on the street nearby and walk to the apartment building. My thought was, at least, is that we would specify in the contract that the street had to be left passable, at least one lane after construction was done for the day. But in terms of access all day long, it's going to be extremely difficult to allow that. It wouldn't be impossible, but if you were to build that into the contract, the prices would likely skyrocket because their efficiency would go way down in pretty much everything they're trying to do if they had to keep like a lane of traffic open all day long.
How much might that extend the construction time?
If you were to keep one lane open,
Yeah,
I would guess on the order of weeks. I mean, you'd be talking quite a bit of constraint for their activities and where they can, it would be very difficult. I mean, specifically, maybe one good example would be digging sanitary sewer. You know, usually their trenches, say 10 to 12 feet wide, and then they have spoil piles next to it, and a backhoe is 14 feet wide, and when the street is only 25 total now, you know, a 12-foot trench and a spoil pile that's 10 feet wide at the base, that's your whole street right there. And if they had to move, say, their spoil pile out onto somebody's yard, or it would complicate things a great deal if we were to try and allow constant access.
for Fargo, would we be able to allow access?
Yes, Fargo is just storm sewer down one. The pipe will actually be kind of on the western third of the road, so the eastern half of the road should be passable a good chunk of the time. There may be some times where, you know, they may block it off, local traffic only. You might just have to kind of go around the block to get to the back side of a, you know, active construction zone that's 100 feet long or something like that. But generally, that road will be at least halfway drivable.
Yeah, Fargo's substantially wider, and the construction is just storm sewer, which will be on an edge.
I'm just wondering whether it might be worthwhile to canvass the apartment house and the houses to see whether there's any disabled people who might have a problem, to prevent, be forewarned and prevent, see what can be worked out if we have that situation there. People in wheelchairs or
Yeah.
walkers, I have no idea, but
Something that could be done in a situation like that was you could specify that one of the sidewalks had to remain at all times, that one could be replaced and then at the other one could be torn out and replaced, so that at least there was a hard surface pedestrian route at all times. That said, once you get down towards the end of Browns Court, there's currently no
yeah,
place for, I mean, you kind of have to go down somebody's driveway, apron onto the roadway to get to the apartment building. There's not a true sidewalk connection, which is something we plan to remedy as part of this project.
I was in the apartments last year, and I don't remember any handicapped accessible sites in the building.
oh, really?
Yeah, I know that it's all stairs, there's no elevators, and even onto the first floor, there's a couple steps. So I would think that handicapped accessible would be, you know, difficulty walking.
Well, maybe it might be worthwhile just to mention that if you have some problems, you better let us know.
I have contacted the owner of the apartment building, so they're at least aware of the project in concept, that it's going to happen this summer and that the access will be extremely limited.
That doesn't necessarily
I understand, yeah.
get down to the tenant.
Yeah, I understand it.
There may be no one, I'm just trying to look at a little bit.
When do you anticipate Cook Street? Because I know the school buses use that to swing around, to park the buses by the junior high.
But the anticipation is sometime this summer.
In the summer,
If there's
okay.
a concern of,
Well-
that we want to try to stagger construction to be after school is out, absolutely.
Okay.
That's something that we could work in if the
Well, they
board
could
would
easily
like.
go up all the way to Ferry and swing around, but you just let them know that the buses won't be able to use Cook Street to swing around, to park at the junior high.
Generally, we have a pre-con as soon after the bid as we can.
Okay.
As the bid award as we can. Generally, they have to get their contract document signed, and then once that's done, we have a pre-con. Then we sit down and go over with them what we anticipate the best schedule will be and why. So,
The other aspect, right now, the way it's set up, if we open bids middle of February, we'd be talking hopefully about having signed accepted contracts sometime in April, and they could start very soon after that. If you limit a contractor to a certain exact time window for a certain spot, it's a little bit subjective, but generally that makes their price go up because their flexibility to fit other projects in and things goes down. So it's preferable to allow as much flexibility as you can if there's not some big reason to limit them.
generally, though, they don't want to deal with buses any more than the buses want to deal with them. So, generally, if we sit down at the pre-con and go over what the conditions are, it's easier to get a decent schedule worked out.
Any further?
I don't have any more further questions.
Anybody else?
We have planned to, based on the council meeting, to send out notices as soon as we have a bid award. So
All right.
we may canvass the site now.
All right, moving on then to item 6, item 6, discussion on sewer user permits. So you sent out 5, what is it called? Permit applications. How many have you received back now?
None that I know of.
Well, I think the memo said 1.
Well, I said none that I know of.
Okay,
I haven't seen them.
okay,
If they've come back, they're probably either in Paul's hand or with Kevin, and likely with Kevin, the engineer, to review what the conditions should be before they get sent back to me.
There's still a few days left
yeah.
to get them in.
I anticipated at least one of them being here tonight. Bill or Dwayne. But I know Paul had asked not to come tonight because his son was starting his first basketball game tonight. Or Kevin.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
It seems straightforward, a lot of questions about
Yeah.
what to do.
Yeah. And I'm sure if any of the people asked to fill this out have questions, can ask the city or the city engineer. Anything else?
I don't have any
Anybody?
questions or comments.
Nope. All right. Moving on then to number 7, discussion on dam construction design. And we've got some drawings. Steve, I had to get my magnifying glass out to look at these.
Well, this is the intersection of Veterans of Main Street. And this is the Legion Building.
Yeah, I could see those big things.
And there's the dam. The existing dam and the outflow structures. This is the proposed new structure.
So right now, everything's underground,
Everything's underground.
and the proposal is that it won't be all underground.
Correct.
But the section to the left there, that's going to be a box culvert that's all underground, right?
Yes, a 60 by 48 foot, not foot, inch box culvert from the existing head wall and dam to this point right here. And this is the narrowest, this is pretty narrow between the buildings here, and then they have that sidewalk access. And
Right.
you have all this handicap parking here, so we wanted to be able to maintain handicapped access into this building here. So we brought a box culvert to this point, and then we opened it up, and we wanted to make it as maintenance-free as possible. It's not quite what any of us were hoping for. I know that certain people were hoping for a more, a deeper channel, open more distance. I was hoping for better grades that are easier to mow and maintain without having any head walls or those types of things. But the design constraints were just so difficult that in order to be able to keep the project within the costs that were originally discussed, which was in around $600,000, this was the design that came in the best.
So what's going to be open? Can you point what's going to be opened up?
This whole area right here is going to
Areas
be
gonna
open.
Opened up?
Yep. This area here will have some retaining wall in it or some kind of riprap structures. I'm anticipating at least some of this area will be fenced, so we will be using, I don't know if you remember, but we'll be using that old, I shouldn't say old, but the fence structures given to us by the Arts Alliance. And we'll probably have to have, based on how long this distance is, we'll probably have to have some more made. So that will be part of the project.
No,
But basically, a lot of this area here is easily accessible. You can walk into here and basically mow this whole area up along, or along the walls and watch the bottom. You can watch the stream run, and it does have sort of a fall across several stones, so you get that cascading waterfall feeling out of it. So it basically kind of covered every design concept that was desired in the original discussions. You can see here the box culvert, and then it comes out, and then it drops down across the stones, and then it comes out and enters the one structure.
It's more like a little rapid than any kind of a waterfall based upon
Yeah.
the drop there, right?
Yep.
It's not like the way it was before at all.
No,
Most of the drop occurs to the right someplace
yes.
where it's enclosed.
are they going to add extra cost, or is it just cheaper to do it this way?
This
anyway?
is the most cost efficient
Oh, really?
while still achieving most of the desired goals, yes.
Okay.
So in other words, it won't be a narrow canyon.
No, it will not.
It'll be a wider,
So it'll be an improvement from the old spillway that people,
and the bed.
Yeah, across the board, it'll be an improvement, because, you know, those retaining walls were all the way around, and then the bottom was just kind of slopped in concrete. And you had a reinforced concrete pipe attached to a corrugated metal pipe, so you had a lot of turbulence issues coming through the pipes. The way it hit the bottom and actually entered the arch was a problem, probably contributed to some of the issues that we had. There were a lot of stormwater pipes that had been popped through the arch over the years, which also contributed to the ability of material to seep in and then start causing because the arch basically were stones that were set in a specific way with a keystone, and once those areas weren't held tight in place, it allowed that to start collapsing. So all the features that were kind of extraneously tied to the arch and thrown into place, kind of led to the collapse of the arch. Now it lasted, what, 100 and, 100,
years or something.
yeah, 110, 115 years. I mean, it was kind of on its way, but everything was kind of adding to the eventual failure of that arch. So with that gone now, having these openings and being able to come in, you get less of a drop, so you're going to have less people. You know, we used to get a lot of complaints from people about how dangerous it was, and their kids were playing around the edge of it, and so we always had to stay on the fence, and then maintaining the walls was difficult, and there was always debris growing up in the bottom. Wade Magnuson did a lot of work in that area over the years as a volunteer. So this one will be easier to maintain from almost every aspect.
Will the floor of the bed of the stream, will that be natural or will that be artificial?
As I understand, and I'm not going to guarantee anything, but I thought it was natural with river stone or some type of riprap in it.
So there's a section, cross-section here on one of these pages.
Right here.
That's in the open area, right?
That's up in this area, up in here, yeah.
In the open area?
Yeah, as you get into this area, it opens up.
I can't see where you're pointing right now.
Oh, sorry. That's in this area right here. Then here it opens up more and
Okay.
down. So that was my anticipation based on some of the conversations I had with the engineer, but you're correct. I was looking at this portion here too and saying, I'm not absolutely sure how far it'll go, but if you have the concrete bottom, I don't know why he'd be adding the riprap and river stone into it. So,
Can you go back to this page?
yeah.
I can't really tell without my magnifying glass, how wide is this open area? Like between the retaining walls? I'm kind of wondering what the slope is, because I know the ISO contour lines are 1 foot, so you got, 3, maybe 4 feet, well, probably about 3 feet drop across some distance, but I don't know if that's 5 feet or 20 feet.
I was here last Tuesday when Warren from Eden Hunt presented to City Council, and I believe it was, I think he said 3-to-1 slopes, which I think dropped, I want to say 4 or 5 feet maybe, down to the channel bottom, and then you had the retaining walls. This is just from memory, but
Yeah.
something like that. It's not 10 or 12 feet. It's something, half a dozen or less, I believe, feet of slope.
Yeah, this area here has got 10 feet on this side. It's got a 2-foot bottom, and then it's got a little over 8 feet on this side. So you're basically looking from this point to this point about 20 feet.
Oh, okay.
Will the face of the dam be pretty much like it is now?
I guess the retaining walls will be a type of concrete wing wall,
Like it is now?
similar to what it is now. I'm not sure if he's going to go with some type of formed cast or not, or if it's just going to be a straight concrete wing wall. The actual dam area is going to be more open. You will be able to see the actual dam and the mechanisms that work.
I can't remember, what kind of mechanism did we talk about?
It's a split gate, so it's 2 pieces. And the one drops to allow the water to flow over the top. And then if you want to, you can raise it. And then this one will hook the bottom one and will pull it all up. And so you can open it up completely and then dump it. So that's the type of, it's a split gate and it's on hydraulic arms that raise it.
So it'll be a lot less effort for our employees to.
Yeah, we did quite a bit of research. Obviously, what we do now is about as labor intensive as you can get. We also looked at the ones where you have the gate with the screw, but those tend to jam up, especially with ice and a lot of heavy pressure, and they tend to pop or wedge or go through a lot of other types of issues. So they weren't very popular. So the ones, this type tends to be able to work under most of the conditions that we face in our situation.
Any further discussion?
I don't have any.
Would the retaining wall on the mill pond side, would it be pretty much the length, same length that it is now, or?
Yes.
Anything else? All right. Moving on to number 8, discussion recommendation on sanitary sewer impact fees. And we have a prepared motion, and we talked about this last month. And that's about it.
This is just an analysis, right?
Yes, this takes the facilities assessment plan that you recommended on the last time and the council approved, and then gives them a basis for start developing their fee analysis and recommendations to us on what fees we should be charging in wastewater.
I'll make a motion to approve motion 15-1-1 to recommend the city council authorize a sanitary sewer impact fee analysis.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
We had lengthy discussions at previous meetings, so we knew this was coming.
Yeah, normally when you have impact fees, you do these about every 5 years.
Right.
It's been a
We
while.
haven't done one since '96.
And this is for new development. This is not going to target existing homeowners.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Reich?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Motion passes.
The one thing I might note is that I think the developers anticipate the fee going down. And I think I do too.
It's done what, just in deflation or?
Yeah, well, not deflation, but the rate of change in the wastewater flows.
Oh,
We've done a pretty good job of reducing inflow and infiltration, and growth hasn't been what it was anticipated to be, so spreading those costs out and our anticipation and the demand timeline for those gives us the opportunity to have lower fees.
right,
Not in water, but in wastewater.
right.
Okay, motion passed. Moving on to item 9, discussion recommendation on capital facilities analysis proposal, utilities, cash flow, and debt analysis and rate study proposal. There's a motion
I'll make a,
and a proposal.
I'll make a motion to approve motion 15-1-2 to recommend the city council authorize a capital facilities analysis and a cash flow debt analysis.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second. Discussion.
The, what this is looking at is taking, we kind of have our capital plan in place, we have an idea of what it's going to cost, but we really don't know how it's going to affect our rates. over the years. So what this is doing is trying to blend the capital plan and the cost with our rates to say, okay, this is how, if we do our projects in this fashion, we will keep our rates as flat as possible. And we will have an idea of when to raise our rates on a regular basis. So it's kind of a combination of saying, an analysis of saying, okay, if we do these projects in the right order and at the right time, we can keep our rates as low as possible. But when we do have to raise them, we already have a pretty good idea of what timeline we're looking at. And so it gives you a good idea of what you're going to be looking at as far as how your capital budgets are impacting your rates.
And when you say capital facilities, I mean, obviously, it's not buildings, because we just got approved the new building. Are you talking transformers and lines?
Well, basically, we're talking capital budget, so whatever hits the capital budget. So
Equipment and,
mainly, it's going to be like Browns Court, Cook Street, all the facilities that go in with it, possibly the water main on American Way, the upgrade of the lift station at Sandy Beach, putting in the manifold and those types of things. That analyzes all those. Our capital budget, which you guys approve every year, has a whole list of projects and the related costs. And so we know what to budget every year. We just don't have a real good idea of how that impacts the rate. And what we want to do is say, okay, how, based on our normal operating, look at the capital budget and tell us how that impacts our rates. And it really is a very good tool for being able to schedule your capital improvements to have the least impact on your rates long-term.
okay.
So why does this also include DPW, which doesn't have rates?
Well, it has a very similar impact on the tax rate. So it includes the DPW to say, okay, your projects are going to have an impact on your tax rate of this over the years, and so if you reschedule them like this, you can,
So how come it doesn't include parks and everything else?
well,
Everything the city does affects, obviously, the tax rates, and this is only
we
covering
do
one part
not,
of
we do
it.
not capital budget for parks because we have done so few minor projects in parks. The only major project we've done since I've been here is Wallace Park. And that was basically financed by the school district. The city put a minimal amount of money into that project. The dam would be considered a community development project, which would get slid in with the public works projects. So, I mean, and even if we did have a parks project that we had scheduled in there, we would consider it a Department of Public Works project. I mean, we don't separate those out when we're discussing these kinds of things. They're all,
So the proposal didn't mention it, but your memo mentioned 20-year plan scope.
that's because the reason I came up with this was I was involved in a presentation for the Village of Bondwell. And they did this. And the project was done on a 20-year project line.
Well, my thinking is, we have no idea what's going to happen 15 and 20 years from now. Just look at what's happened with the sanitary sewer system and impact fees. It all depends on development and who comes in. I don't see any value in planning out past 10 years.
Well, generally what you do is I'm not going to argue 10 years, 10, 20 years. What we do generally is look at either 10, 15, or 20 years, and then every 5 years kind of come back in and, you know, our capital budget is out 7 years. And actually what I have
And
on the
it changes a lot,
computer-
and it changes a lot right there, right?
And
I
that's
mean,
what I was going to say. And in the computer, I have it out 15 years, but we change it every year.
Yeah,
And I understand that, but at least then we would be able to sit back and say, okay, we have a pretty good idea of how it's going to impact our rates if we make these changes. Or our taxes.
In other words, what-if scenarios?
It gives us a basis to do the what-if scenarios.
I think that, my opinion is, I think this is more analysis than it's worth. It's putting, some analysis is good, but I think this is too much, and as you do more and more analysis, the value of it becomes less and less, and I think this is more than is needed. For example, this DPW $2,000, right now what we do is try and budget at a fairly constant amount per year, and that keeps the, tax rate at a fairly constant amount. And then if it's higher, you do it a big project, then you'd have, of course, you go to borrowing, right?
Right, and that's where, as you run into several major projects where we had been borrowing on a 5-year schedule and the turnover was quick and it was easy to do the analysis on, then you throw in a couple of years where you have 2 big projects and you're now bonding for 20 years, it becomes more difficult. I'm not going to argue that we can be close, but particularly on like water and sewer and streets, it becomes a lot more difficult. Taxes, it's not quite as hard.
Are you wanting to change the scope of this or not do it at all? Is that your
Well-
suggestion to the board?
I mean, the memo here even stated the final proposal will need to be modified. So, I don't, Steve already said this is not necessarily the final proposal, correct?
Right. So how do you want to modify? Do you want to see any more modifications to it? I know that I do. I know that some of the things that they put in there were beyond the scope of what I was looking for.
And, I'm just giving I'm not going to say this and this, but just in general, that's my philosophy. Anybody else want to chime in, feel free to. But it's not going to be, based upon Steve's memo, it's not going to be exactly what we have here in front of us anyways.
Would,
Well, I wasn't going to go back and ask for another proposal if you guys aren't interested. I mean, that was kind of, I know this is a beginning point, and if you guys have some further interest in it and you want to narrow the scope down, I know that he was talking about doing a rate analysis to actually be filed. And I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
So the list here is somewhat à la carte.
Yes.
so what I'm hearing is we kind of already do this without an official study.
We do the budgeting,
Right.
and for tax purposes, by debt, we do almost all of ours by debt, very minimal on the, so we, if you look at it, I carry a spreadsheet that has all our debt and all our interest rates, and when it hits and when it comes off, and so I have a pretty good idea for as long as all our debt's in place, and that, now you know that each year we add on a little bit more and some comes off, and you're trying to figure out how much that is. And obviously it's a gamble, or it's a guess. It's an educated, wild guess. And, but you stay pretty consistent. Now, there are some times when you hit some things that get added on that, are harder to analyze. 20-year debt is a lot harder to analyze than 5-year debt. So then that becomes an issue. But from that standpoint, those are easier than doing rates.
And we always contract out for the rates.
Right, and so
This is
rate
just
analysis, but
yeah.
this isn't really contracting out to have our rates adjusted. This is contracted out to try and figure out what our rates would be based on this.
It's kind of doing it, instead of waiting to the very end, it's kind of figuring it out ahead of time.
It's trying to.
Yeah.
It's trying to put in place something that you have some information to give you an idea.
How do you see this affecting you and the public, and the council and the Public Works Board?
Well, we have 2 projects coming up in 2018 and 2019, South Main Street and Mulberry Street. And the tax portion is going to be consistent with what we do on an annual basis. The water will be $1 million in 18. The sewer will be $1 million in 18. You'll probably be looking at $300,000 worth of water and $300,000 worth of sewer in 19 for Mulberry. And those projects would be really hard to do a calculation on for rates. And water has historically been problematic. Sewer and electric are a little bit easier, and electric in these cases is way ahead. We've already done the $3 million worth of projects on South Main Street and around the lake. So probably that would be less of an issue, but water will be a horrible issue, and wastewater will be difficult to plan out effectively over the next course of years. So I know that CP Avenue needs to be redone. That water main under CP Avenue needs to be redone. You're looking at Cook Street and Brown Street both needing water, and Brewster will need water, and Ferry will need water. And then we get to, and already I know that I'm behind. I'm running, about $3,000 to $4,000 a month behind in the water. So how do I, what kind of rate adjustments am I going to have to plan out over the next 5 to 8 years in order to be able to meet those demands? And you do not want to lay down a concrete street on South Main Street and leave the existing water main there.
But you also don't want to go for a rate increase
Any more than you absolutely have to.
in 2015 or 2016 for a 2017, 2018 project, do you? You can't do that too far ahead, can you?
No.
So you can't really, why do the numbers now when you can't do the rate increase until then?
It gives you an opportunity to think about what kind of projects are going to come up afterwards and how to balance those out. Because otherwise, you're going to be going like this, and you're going to have problems with, and what happens when your demand is there. Trying to figure it out and think about, if we hit this rate at this point and then continue this rate at this level, what will we be able to achieve, and how should we finance that debt, and all those types of things come into play. Because of all the issues that are out there, the water utility is the smallest utility, generates the least amount of revenue, and to take on those kinds of projects over the next several years is a huge issue. And so doing the most effective analysis, particularly on the water utility, will be a real issue. Sanitary is, a project that really needs to be thought about, but water is going to be a huge issue. I don't know how to get around it.
This is kind of peripheral, but I think I've been hearing the transportation fund is short for the state.
Yeah, it's going to be cut, they're going to cut our local aid next year.
And Yes, and so the question becomes, it sounds like our intended reconstruction of South Main Street and so on could possibly be affected by the transportation fund not running a deficit. No?
The transportation fund never provided any funds for the utility upgrades. They did the street, the sidewalks, and the stormwater, but nothing on water and sewer. We were fully obligated for that ourselves, and we knew that when we signed the contract.
And they're committed to it at this point, right?
Yes, on both projects. The issue becomes, what should our rates be headed in? What should our rates be headed out? And how do we best finance that debt? And those are going to be issues that are, because you're not going to run out of water projects or sewer projects in the next 20 years. They're going to be there. And so you can't stop doing the projects. It's like us looking today and saying, you know, I know CP Avenue should be on that capital improvement budget. I think we're going to have to do something this summer anyways. But where do you get the money? Because I don't want to build a brand-new street on Browns Court or Cook and not replace the water main either, because both those water mains are old. I mean, based on the age of the curbs on Browns Court, I got to believe that water main is pretty old. And I know on South Main Street, if that street hasn't been rebuilt since in 75 years, that water main under South Main Street is probably 75 years old.
So in order of where you need the most help in studying this, I'm hearing water utility is number 1, sanitary sewer is number 2, and I'm thinking electric is number 3, and DPW is 4. And on DPW, I heard you say 2017, 2018, that's mostly funded by, not the city. It's relatively flat for those costs, so.
Yeah, our share of those costs are consistent with what our annual public works budget is.
So I don't see a lot of value in that DPW $2,000.
And that's okay. I'm not going to argue that.
Yeah.
So,
So you need a motion to remove that from the motion,
Well, either, yeah, I don't
or
know.
by consensus?
we have them put together a new proposal. And
Is
we'll
there-
come back again next.
All
If
right.
you change one, does it affect the others? Or do you know?
I don't think it will. It looked like kind of à la carte to me.
Okay.
And in reality, they're each very separate sets of analysis.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So particularly the Public Works one. So I don't see that affecting any of the other ones.
Well, I guess if anybody is agreeable with me, I think a motion would make it most clear.
I'll make a motion to modify the proposal to not do the DPW facilities.
To amend the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there,
I'll second that.
okay, motion and second to amend the motion to remove the DPW facilities analysis, correct?
Right.
Any further discussion?
No, it's obvious that we kind of been doing that
Right.
anyways.
All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Reich?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mrs. Wolf?
Aye.
Motion passed 5-0.
Amendment to the motion passes.
Yes, now the main motion.
Right. Any further discussion first on this whole thing? Nope. All right, now the motion to recommend to the city council authorization of a facilities analysis, cash flow analysis. Roll call, please.
As amended.
As amended.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Reich?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Mrs. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Fritsch?
Aye.
Motion passes, and the understanding is that some of these things, even per the proposal, the rate increase things, part of it may very well not be done. Yep. All right. Oh, look, we're down to item 10, recommendations for future agendas.
Can I just ask a point of clarification that came up in the last
Sure.
discussion? So in other words, Steve, the transportation, whether the transportation fund has got money or not, right now, it looks like South Main will go ahead.
Yeah, they've actually got money budgeted for that and Mulberry.
Okay, so that's not part of this problem. It
Not that I
causes
know
the
of.
deficit, but,
Yeah, not that I know of.
okay. All right. Just for my clarification.
All right.
Well, if for some reason they decided to cut that funding, and so we didn't get our money on either one of those projects, I'm pretty sure those projects would not be done because the total project costs were over $6 million for South Main Street and $1.5 million for Mulberry.
So would that delay it?
Oh, yeah.
You want to go out on a limb and say how long?
Well, right now, it's not likely to be delayed, is it?
Yeah,
I don't see that as an issue. I mean, everything that we got another
When is-
committee, we got another meeting,
Once they start signing contracts and making plans, it's,
the money's there.
right.
yeah,
Okay.
it's allocated.
All right. My anxieties are relieved.
They only fund projects that are state highways. I mean, we get local aid for city streets on an annual basis, but for these big projects, they only come in if it's Highway 89. or the
Mulberry is,
County Highway A.
County
Mulberry was a grant
The grant,
the city applied for. It's
Okay.
a 80-20 match, so the city's 20% match of the road and storm sewer.
but we only get grants if it's a county road or a state highway. I mean,
The grant on Mulberry Street would work on any major arterial.
okay, it's major, which mostly is only county roads anyway, right?
Yeah, in Lake Mills, they're mainly county roads. but
Yeah.
Yeah, that would, they have to meet certain criteria and they have to, and generally you get on a list and it's called the, Surface Transportation Urban Plan.
Right.
And you have to file for the grant.
but then that other money for local roads that we get,
That could be snipped. I
Yeah.
can see that being snipped next year, for sure.
Yeah, that would be more likely the one to get clipped. I mean, it, it hasn't been, it's kind of gone up and down over the last 15 years. It's probably at about the same amount it was in 2000 now. You got cut for a while and then came back up a little bit and then down and then up a
Well,
little
it's
bit.
based on gas tax revenue, so, isn't it? I
Well,
think
it's
it is.
still based on
supposed
how
to
much
be.
the governor puts in the budget to send out to you. He
Yeah.
gets his money and then he makes a determination how much gets distributed.
Well, the theory is that 30% of all traffic is on local roads. So it makes sense that 30% of the gas tax is supposed to go back to local communities. Otherwise, we're being double taxed on our own city streets. We pay property tax to build it, we pay state gas tax that goes elsewhere. So it's been tradition to set aside 30% of that fund, but it's not set in stone.
No, it's
Yeah.
not I would say that that's not a rock solid method for making the determination. But obviously, if there's less money there, then
Yeah,
even if it was 30%, we're going to get less.
yeah.
That's why, we haven't accepted County Highway V or County Highway B from the edge of what's now Selgin Tool out past Harvey Road, is because the state aids, you accept that road, you're responsible for maintaining it. And supposedly, state aids are paid to you to, well, it's cheaper for us to let the county maintain it because the state aids really don't cover the cost of it, and so it becomes a heavier burden on the city than it is if the county's taking care of it, so. Taking over county roads isn't at the top of my list anymore. And the county's top priority is getting us to accept them.
For the same reason. Hot potato. Any recommendations for future agendas? Got anything coming down the road?
Looking to redo the Public Works building.
Yeah.
Probably design plans at some point. I don't know that they'll be on the next agenda.
At some point, maybe a discussion of Mulberry exact limits.
Yeah, we need to do that too. We had our initial meeting with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation on the Mulberry project. And so we want to finalize the scope of the project. And that'll be something that we'll have to work through with Brandon as far as what the scope is, where we want it to be, what the specific limits are if we start at Madison Street or if we start at Oak, and then how far north we push.
So is the dollar amount fixed, or is this, that's still?
The dollar amount is fixed.
Okay. So it's a matter of what the scope can be with the dollars that are allocated?
Right, they will allow you to build kind of whatever you want in the plans, but you don't get any more state money. So, yes, the dollar amount is fixed in terms of what the 80-20 match value is, but, the city, if they wanted to do an extra block at their expense, just because it's kind of the last block left that would tie together two arterials or something like that, you could do that.
Okay.
I think the amount of the grant that we got is actually a little bit larger than the designed scope already, so we can expand that a little bit without even doing
And with
that.
these fuel prices going down, that makes the construction costs lower, right?
Should theoretically.
Why are you laughing there?
That's not what,
A
you
few
guys-
years ago, we were complaining about the price of asphalt going up, the price of fuel going up,
Concrete.
Yeah,
so.
I'll wait to see
it depends what
I'll
type
wait
of
to see.
construction. I
See what happens next year.
I've seen more variation in the time of year bidding than I have in the,
Yeah,
I mean, last year, price of fuel really wasn't that significantly different than the year before, but they were charging $10 a truck surcharge because you couldn't find truckers. So it's more of a supply and demand, and, there aren't the number of contractors now that there were in 2007.
no.
One concern might be just a verbal update on how snow plowing's going, salt, that sort of stuff. The deterioration of the roads, that sort of stuff. Winter conditions.
It's actually been better than I anticipated.
All right. If seeing nothing else, then I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.